based on what you saw today, raise your hand if you think you're going to change the way you document at all based on what you saw. A couple of y'all, good. That was kind of the point of it, because it really does all start with documentation. You already know who we are, so we're not going to go over that again, but we do have an attorney here that has to give disclaimers.
Yeah, so technically we're supposed to give this disclaimer probably earlier, but we try to give best practices, doesn't necessarily represent the views of our respective employers. No conflicts of interest. We just like to come and have fun with you guys and get fed. PHI is de-identified. You saw those were redacted charts we looked at earlier. Although I am an attorney, I'm only the attorney for folks that wear Grady badges. And always, always, always follow your local protocols or guidelines. Follow your policies, follow your scope of practice, and everything that your medical director says. Yes.
All the time.
All the time.
So like we said, it does always start with your documentation.
All right, so when we've gone through these charts, and some of them have just been really, really good, every time I look at a chart, I want to see the story. I want to see what happened when you got there, what you did while you were there, and what happened. Did the patient get better? Did the patient get worse? Where did you go? What was your decision making?
One of the things we saw yesterday that we didn't see today that we do want to kind of bring up and bring to your attention is if you do an intervention, any intervention, there needs to be something behind that intervention in your narrative to explain what happened next. So earlier today, and we saw it today with the first patient who started seizing after admitting that he had shot himself in the head, you had in there, and then the patient started seizing. So, and because he was seizing, we gave Versed. And one of the things that Sam started to touch on a little bit is we didn't quite see in there, well, after the Versed, what happened? Well, the patient stopped seizing. So anytime you give any intervention, there should be something in your narrative to explain what happened next.
All right, so, describing the scene, describing the information that you got, whether that was from dispatch, whether that's from the patient, whether that's family on scene, how that factored into. So if your dispatch, yesterday we saw one that was dispatched to a coronary incident, and it turned out to be respiratory distress. So if what you hear initially turns out to not be the thing that you rolled up on, make sure that you explain that. Description of the findings that factor into your field impression, anything that you see physically in doing your assessment. Why you made particular decisions or chose courses of action. If you deviate in any way from your guidelines, why did you do that? So earlier we talked about, considering C-spine. Well, you considered it. What did you consider about it, and what did you do otherwise? And
you guys, I mentioned that earlier today, is that the first thing I do as an expert witness is I look at your report and I compare that to your guidelines, to your protocols. And if there's any deviation from that protocol, you need to put in there why. Why? Yeah. Again, we were going to bring up yesterday, there was a chest pain incident where nitro was not given, but it was completely silent about why it wasn't given. She is going to pick up on that based on what I tell her, but there should be something in there that says, hey, we know our protocol and guidelines say this, 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 and this, but we did not do this because of X.
Yep. And then discussing the treatments you did, the protocols you followed, and the patient and scene evolution. What happened? Where did you go? Like I said, did the patient get better? Did they get worse? What happened? Okay, so, if it's not documented, it wasn't done, right? Bad documentation makes good care look bad. This is one of my favorite ones. You could have done the most awesome care on a patient, but if your narrative is 3 lines long, that looks like you didn't spend time, you didn't do any care. And so what I can do is I can turn that documentation around to make it look like your care was poor because you didn't spend enough time on that documentation. Now, everything doesn't need to be an 8-page novel, okay? But generally, things don't need to be 3 lines either.
Like that first case today. The C-collar. He says the C-collar was there, but it wasn't in his documentation.
Exactly. All right, and poor records mean a poor defense. Oh, well, do charts, please. You are required to by the state. But the other reason that they're so important to have a chart is so I have something to defend. I can defend a bad chart. It's not easy, but it can be done. It is very hard to defend no chart. I have a case going on right now where we have a police report that shows our guys on scene doing some stuff. wasn't very friendly to our guys. We have the hospital report where it shows how they came in and the report they gave to the ER doc. Guess what we don't have? Their chart in the middle. I have no idea what these guys did, and they don't really remember the call either. So most lawsuits, how many years generally go by before a lawsuit is filed? It can be as much as that. Generally 2. Do you remember what you had for breakfast 2 years ago today? No. Okay. Well, and if you're not in the habit of having 2 muffins in the morning, then, and doing the same thing every day, what's going to save you is having that documentation, because then you're going to be able to go back and see. Question?
So, and going back to that, just been doing this, so when you look at these different charts, do you notice that there's different narratives written different ways, like storyline versus a chart format versus...
Repeat the question for the recording.
To find the better detail in?
So the question is about the format of the charts, and I think we're actually about to get to that. You can do the chart whatever way your service tells you to do it, if there's a particular way, or whatever way makes the most sense to you. So some of my folks like to do chronological, some people like to do SOAP, some people like to do chart. There's like 3 other ways that you can do it. Whatever makes sense to you and helps you get the most detail in there for your care, do that, and do that consistently. That way you'll make sure that you're not missing things on the scenes.
And I would say, based on what we've seen over time, there's no best way that we've seen when it comes to defense or legally. So it's really whatever works for you.
Yeah.
I like chronological myself. I used to do SOAP a little bit. I didn't like SOAP. So
you didn't like it?
I like
okay.
SOAP. One of the things we brought up here is poor records means poor defense, but no records means no defense. We are seeing that more and more frequently nowadays. And that's because of body cams. If any of you all, so the situation I'm going to give you is that the no patient found. My fire medics like to use, hey, there's no patient found, so we're going to not do a PCR. And then we go back and look later, and because it's recorded, I'm going to say not my fire medics, but random fire medics, we'll go back later and there'll be body cam where we clearly see a patient contact made. And a patient contact in our state is defined as any time you touch or talk to a patient. And a patient has a very specific definition. So if you have a patient, make sure you do at least do a PCR. So, all right, so
it's not documented, it didn't happen. So the bad hair was not documented. The bad hair
did not happen. There you go.
Unless it's on body cam, and then it did.
You should be a lawyer.
And we see that, right? So we see that they have ring cams, they have, other things. People are on cell phones. My guys get recorded constantly on cell phones. In fact, there's an Instagram account called ATL Uncensored that really could be Grady EMS Uncensored, because it's like my guy's on it all the time. And I tell them, y'all, you're being recorded. So do the right thing all the time. Be thoughtful about that, because even if you say, well, there's no patient found, but we're clearly standing around talking to the patient, doing an assessment, you got your stethoscope out, you're listening, you found a patient.
Yeah.
So.
Understand your EPCR. You guys are actually really far ahead of the game. Most people we talk to have never seen how their PCR prints out. They've only seen the tablet version of their PCR, and they don't know what it looks like on the end. Does everybody here know what your printed PCR? That's huge, because when you go to court, they're not going to bring your tablet with you to court. They're going to put your paper PCR right in front of you and say, are you able to defend this? And what we found is that a lot of medics did not know how things looked on the other side. An example of that, I'm actually going to move ahead a slide, is if you're not checking all these boxes, what does it say? Not assessed. Not assessed. And again, we'll talk about a report we saw yesterday. It was for respiratory difficulty, and they did a 12 lead, but their chest assessment was not assessed. We were like, how did you not assess the chest, but you did a 12 lead and you took off their shirt and did all those things? So do know that if you don't click the box on the back side, it's going to say not assessed. Yesterday we saw dizziness and giddiness, right? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Dizziness and giddy.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that on your reports?
Yeah, so that goes to a shortcoming of using the software itself.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Yep.
And that was, when we got to that, we said, you're saying they're giddy? And he was able to say, well, that's ESO. That's a checkbox, right?
And that's multiple PCRs. That's
If
happened
that's
at least
what
3
you're
of the
looking
ones
at
I've
there,
used.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the slide after that, that's an image trend chart.
yeah,
Yep.
you're right.
Completely different system, but yet the same verbiage.
Yeah,
And the same goes for the EMD code. Because we have to put something in there, we're forced to choose whatever is closest,
Yep.
not what is most accurate.
yep.
Yes.
And that is a failure of the software. It's not your failure at all. We completely agree. We did find out that there's another terminology for giddiness. It actually means vertigo.
Vertigo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go check, but I'm pretty sure in Image Trend it actually says dizziness and vertigo, which in ESO it says dizziness and giddiness, which is weird.
And just know,
Depends on what you put in your narrative, right?
Yeah.
well,
absolutely.
it can. So know that if you have these software limitations, like Nick said, you guys are well ahead because you understand how some of these systems work. Be prepared to explain that because there is an easy explanation for that. That's the software that's an issue. That's not your care. But I, as an attorney, if I'm not familiar with that system, I don't necessarily know that. It's your job to educate.
This is from Image Trend. You guys can see it says for me, CNS behavior strange and inexplicable. What does inexplicable mean?
Has no explanation.
Has no explanation.
That I cannot explain.
Yeah, which I hate that in our system, but that's something that's in Image Trend. Just so you guys are aware, I use Image Trend, she uses ESO, so we have slides from both systems. We already talked about that. Again, you guys already know how things come out at the end, so we don't really need to harp on that, but you know, if you see this like just blob of text here, this is how the reports look when you print them off. And it even gets down to left little finger not assessed. So just be aware of how things look when they come out on the back end and be willing and able to explain it. All right, we're gonna actually look at some real honest to goodness reports from one of our systems. If it was bad, it's her system. If it's good, it's my system, okay?
I don't think there's any good ones in here.
Yeah. This is a real report that came out, and we're going to talk about, not specifically to your system, but if you noticed, this was a report. It was, what's the terminology?
Auto-generated.
Auto-generated. Do you guys use auto-generate here? Good. Auto-generate is very bad. This report was auto-generated, and we printed it out for a case, and we found that it said, on arrival, found in 87 year. Great. I'm glad you found. And then at 1318, the patient was found. Again, good.
It's a good
Field
start.
impression was malaise not applicable, and the patient was transported to not reporting, not recorded. So that's an example of what we call an auto-generated report.
All right, so things I notice every time I go through a chart, because the medicine isn't usually my thing to start with. I want to go through and I want to see where you have been inconsistent in the chart, whether there's an improper diagnosis, whether there's missing parts, like there's a missing cardiac strip, but you did a 12 lead on somebody. I want to see if there are things like yesterday we had one where I believe it was the chief complaint was different than what was put in the narrative
That's
later.
right.
And
It was
so
mild distress versus no distress.
yes, okay. So the narrative said the patient was in no distress, and the initial part said the patient was in mild distress. So which one is it? So I want to go through and make sure that, and as you're doing your reports and reading them over, make sure that you haven't said something above or put something in the comment box or checked something off that you then go into your narrative and do something different, okay? Reports that sound too much alike. We, at one time in QA, pulled some charts for a medic. Every single time he went to the nursing home, every patient was down 20 minutes. Not every patient was down 20 minutes. Some of them were down 18 or 15 or what. Yeah, I mean, but it's the same thing, right? So he was literally cutting and pasting. And that's the concern, is that you're not actually doing a new narrative for each patient. You're just saying, oh, well, they were at a nursing home, so here's the narrative. Late entries, those are okay, but you need to be prepared to explain them. Don't put in late entries like a week later. Please, don't do that.
Let's drill down on that.
Yes.
So, okay. When is it okay to change your chart, and when is it okay to do an addendum?
Okay. It is always okay to go back and change things in your chart before it's locked, because you need to be able to do that. Although, be careful, because if you did certain things and then you found out the outcome was bad, and you went back and changed things in your chart. That can be problematic, okay? And people can ask you questions about that. If you remembered something 24 hours later and you're like, oh, I forgot to put that in and it's a really important detail, you can put an addendum about that. If you thought about it a week later after you found out the person died, don't put it in like that. Put it in, send it to QA, however you guys do. We have folks send it to our QA department as a statement, or we put it in an incident report rather than putting it in the actual report. So we have a record of it, but we don't have to go back and explain, well, why did you put in this addendum a week later?
So one of the things to keep in mind, and this has caught some agencies in trouble, is that all of our systems have what's called a change log. And attorneys can pull that change log. So like Sam was saying, let's say you filled out a PCR and you go back to the hospital later that day and they're like, oh man, your needle decompression, pierced,
The liver.
The liver, yeah, let's use liver. And you're like, oh crap, I need to change my report. And you go in and change your report after you know that fact, that there was something done wrong. Attorneys can see that change log, and they're going to ask you about it. They're going to be like, why did you feel like you had to change your report after you knew that the needle had pierced the liver? So there are some things like that. So late entries, got to be careful with.
Yep.
Here's
Okay.
some more actual reports.
What kind of call do you think this was? That's a psych call, exactly.
We got a
Be
question back
careful. Oh,
Can I actually ask about late entries?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
At my full-time job at Greenville, generally how we do the QA is our QA guy will send us a message, be like, change this because it looks like you made a mistake here, it looks like you made a mistake here. And then we'll go in, we'll make the changes that he says to make, and then we'll fill out an addendum box that says we made this change, and this change specifically, and here is why. Is that appropriate?
That sounds pretty good to
yeah,
me.
yeah, that's appropriate to do. And then just know that if that comes up later, just to be able to explain why you did it. Yeah. All right, so pre-filling reports and then not going back and filling in the proper information, careful about that. That chart got locked and sent to the state with that there. Needless to say, the state had some things to say about it. Okay. That's, yeah, it was.
Again, go to law school.
Yes. Be careful about blame. Okay, so this is a chart where they were treating, the EMS folks were treating one patient. They were treating patient 2. And fire was treating patient 1, I guess. And so when fire was reporting certain things about this patient 1 was not assessed by EMS, but handed off to a different crew. And the crew that was treating this patient 2 had some feelings about care being delayed on patient 1. Now, why do they need to have feelings about that in patient 2's report? Did that have anything to do with the care of patient 2? Don't put that in there. If you have concerns about what another service was doing, we in ours generally say put that in an incident report or send it to QA instead, because then it can be addressed with the other service. But be careful about that, because you just opened the door to yourself as a witness. Don't do that.
An example of this, and I just, you guys run with fire here. Let's say you run with fire in NBC and fire doesn't put a C-spine on, and later you find out that there was some sort of cervical fracture. Stick to the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. So you can put in there, upon arrival, patient was found looking like this, no cervical collar was applied. Period. Just stick to the facts. Yep.
Yeah, and be careful about that. Is this a patient or not a patient? So we have one where we've been dispatched to a subject who was tased. We don't know if it's a patient yet, but is somebody who's been tased and out of breath and with chest pains a potential patient? Yeah, they have a complaint, right? So they were dispatched to a subject, then it's a patient, because they say patient is in custody, and then what do they say? No patient contact made. Well, how do you know he was tased? How do you know he was out of breath? How do you know he was having chest pains if you didn't make patient contact? then we're back to a subject, highly intoxicated and out of control. And also, there's another potential patient, right, who's shaken up and might need evaluation, and she was a refusal. Do you think they did a refusal chart? Absolutely not. So, all right. Now, everybody's favorite. Okay, so what we're going to do with this part, this is actually one of my favorite things. AI is coming to EMS. AI is coming to documentation. We have seen several presentations by different companies, ESO included, ImageTrend, First Do, some other ones, where AI has generated a narrative based on some things that were input.
Has anyone seen this or used this in other services?
I know First Do, they were bragging about their AI being able to listen in the background.
Yep.
So call out the skill that you did.
Yep.
It's supposed to
Timestamp it and chart it.
Because it's listening to everything that's happening in the truck.
Yep. Have you used it?
Documenting it as you do it.
Have you had a chance to use it?
No, I've heard about I ain't using that.
It's really cool.
It's cool.
It even censors out the curse words, I promise.
Yeah. I was surprised by that, but we tried it out.
Has anyone else seen it?
I use Claude. Yes, sir.
Claude?
I use Claude for every.
Okay. Well, then.
Not on the EMS call.
There you go. I'm glad you said that. I love Claude too.
Then this is for you. All right. So what I did was I took one of my favorite charts of all time. Okay, go ahead.
Right,
and I'm going to show you the original, and then I'm going to show you the AI narrative. All right. So what do we, well, no, go back for a second.
All right.
What do we see in this chart?
Nothing.
Nothing. What do we see in the second part?
Nothing
was assessed. All right, narrative. Obvious 48, a jumper. So an obvious 48 is a dead guy, and a jumper jumped. How do we know he's dead? You didn't assess him. You didn't see this patient. You didn't look at him. How do you know that he jumped? How do you know that he did any of these things? You didn't look at it. Yes. Well, the story on this, the medical examiner came looking for this chart. My QA officer sent it to me and said, "Sam, don't pull it up yet.
Not yet?
You know, you're going to hate this chart." And I'm like, "I love this chart. I'm going to trot it around the office so everybody can see it. This is the greatest chart in the history of ever." It has made the rounds of many presentations because I love it. Because it turns out fire was there first, determined the guy was deceased. That was it. That's all they had to write. But instead, they wrote some things about the patient's condition without doing any assessment or getting any information about the patient. So I took just that information that I had and I popped it into ChatGPT. And here's what I got. Oh, a whole narrative. Look at that. It's so beautiful, right? There's a whole bunch of things going on. Obvious traumatic injuries observed, deemed incompatible with life. Per protocol, no resuscitative efforts were initiated. Pronounced deceased at the scene. Well, if your chart says no assessment and you have no documentation whatsoever, what obvious traumatic injuries did you see? Okay, nothing. What protocol did you follow? We have a specific protocol for not initiating resuscitation. What did they follow? None of that is there. So if these medics had taken that information that they had, popped it into an AI narrative, and put it in that chart, would they have been able to remember any of the things that they did? What if this is the narrative and all the rest of that stuff stays the same? Then what? I mean, I can just be there. We could be there all day with that deposition. Yeah, so, I mean, we've all had one, right? We've all had one. So be careful with those narratives. They can be a great tool, okay? They can be a great thing, but if you have not gone back and read through and made sure that every single thing, including definitions of words, and those sorts of things, that you have made sure that you understand and that it accurately reflects all the care that you did, that's going to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
That's going to get you in trouble.
One of the things we're telling people who have migrated to AI or AI reports is it is still your report. And when you sit in that chair, it is still your report. We did see an incident one time, this happened one time, where an AI generated report put a word in the narrative that the paramedic did not know what the word meant. Well, when you're sitting in that chair and they ask you, do you know what this word means? You better know. because the AI had generated that word. I can't remember what word it was right now. I need to look it up.
Oh, and you know what's even better? When you cut and paste it out of ChatGPT and you leave the prompt in there and put that in your
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
I've seen that
Bad.
too. That was exciting. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's killing me. Like, I'm trying to find out if I need to recommend this person be fired. So it's somebody I'm training that was given to me because he failed his first test with the medical director, and they're like thinking I can work with like a miracle. Sorry, language. I caught him when I looked at his narrative. I caught him in the background. Apparently, since medic school, this person has been keeping a running tally of narratives from all different kinds of calls, and I've caught him copying and pasting those narratives
talk about
for
that later.
similar
Let's
calls
talk about that
that's,
later.
yeah, that's an
into
HR.
a current narrative, but then changing details to fit the current.
My medical director said we'll have to put that in the parking lot, but we can talk about that
No,
later.
it's
Yeah.
from my full-time job, not here.
We
I've
could
never
sideline
seen
it.
that here. I've seen it.
Always start out with hypothetically speaking.
A friend told me.
A friend told me one time.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that can be very concerning. So, and that's like, that goes back to the guys with the
I think it's
nursing home
because
charts.
we're being recorded right now, so we're going to talk
Right.
about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But charts that look too similar, we talked about this before, that can be a problem. So be thoughtful about that. When you're up on the stand and you're having to answer questions about it, make sure that was your chart that you wrote. Okay? Make sure that you have an understanding. If your partner wrote a chart, you are generally considered to be responsible for that as well. So we all want you to trust your partners, okay? And we want everybody to do a good job. Trust but verify. Read that chart and make sure that everything that's in there is exactly what you wanted to have in there. And I asked Mr. Duffy about that this morning, but you know, and you wrote a great chart. So, but those kind of things you want to go back and read through and make sure, did she capture everything that you did, right, that you did while you were there? And make sure all of that stuff is accurate, fill it in as needed.
And you did an amazing thing this morning. When she gave you the document, you looked through it and you were like, there's 2 pages missing. That was fantastic. Make sure any document that they give you, make sure you verify it when they hand it to you. Because like we were talking earlier, if they reference a policy, a protocol or guideline or policy, they have a copy because they've read through it. So if they say, hey, according to your seizure protocol, you're supposed to do cervical spinal mobilization, make sure you see that because they do have a copy of it.
All right, so we're going to talk about some deposition tips and tricks just to round this out today. Some of the things you've already heard. When we talk about depositions and why folks want to take them, you can kind of click through it quick, but I do depositions for a couple of different reasons. I want to know my facts. I want to know good things about my case and bad things about my case. I want to know how you do as a witness. I want to get some admissions, okay? I want to get some trial themes, like the Pickens County way. I want to authenticate documents. Yes, in fact, that's your PCR. No, it's great stuff. I want to pin down your testimony so that I can then maybe trip you up later when you're in trial. What else? Okay, but from Nick's perspective, why does a lawyer take a deposition? Obviously. Okay, obviously.
Pretty sure that's correct.
Yeah, it's correct. So, tips and tricks. We're going to talk a little bit about the things that we've noticed, and we've talked about some of it in our debrief, but the things that are important for you guys to remember when you are giving testimony of any kind, whether it is a deposition, whether you're on the stand, whatever. Let's start with this. Make sure you tell the truth. Make sure you are honest about the things that you did. Okay, if you did not do something on a scene and somebody else did, that's okay. I did not do that thing. That is the truth. If you didn't consider something, okay, admit that. Let's go around it. Make sure that you are always being honest about it, because if you're not being honest, that's when lawyers love to catch you in those lies. They love to do it, and they'll come back to it when you least expect it. So make sure that you're always being honest. And if it's honest that you didn't do the right thing, that's okay. That's okay. There's mechanisms for dealing with that kind of stuff, but always start with telling the truth.
I want to ask you a quick question on this one. I want to challenge you on it.
Okay.
Because one of the last questions you ask everybody is, sitting in this chair right now. I love it when you start with sitting in this chair right now. That's a warning. When she starts with that's bad news. You ask, sitting in this chair right now today, is there anything you would change?
Oh, yeah. Well, and the answer to that may be yes. Okay, there may be some things that you see when you're going through your documentation later where you're like, well, you know, I wish I had documented that I spoke to this person on the scene. I wish I had documented more about the way the car looked on the accident scene. That's okay. You can admit those things. And, you know, your attorney hopefully would have prepped you for getting those kind of questions and how to best answer them. But sometimes it's okay to say, no, there's not a single thing I would change. And that's all right. Okay.
Pause after each question. So there's a couple of reasons they do this. Is remember, when you're being interviewed, you have your attorney there with you. So your county attorney, your personal attorney, however that looks, after each question is answered, you should take a breath and pause for about a beat of 1 second, 1001. That gives you a chance to think about your answer, and it also gives your attorney a chance to object to the question. And in depositions I've been in, that happens a lot. The attorney will be like, object to form, object to substance. They'll do a whole bunch of objections. You still have to answer the question, but it gives your attorney a chance to do that.
Yep. And then also what I tell my folks before we go into depositions is that my objection is going to give you a clue as to something that's wrong. So I might say something like, objection, it calls for speculation. Okay, which means that you don't actually know. You're just like, well, I assume. Don't do that. Make sure you're listening to the objection because it'll give you a clue about how to answer the question.
The end. Keep answers short.
Yes. And again, no. And again, don't speculate, right? So
Or guesstimate.
Or you know, or assume or anything else, right? Make sure if you don't know, you don't know. Now, be careful about the I don't know, okay? Because if I were to say, you know, Chief Adams, you would agree with me that you're wearing a red shirt today.
I don't recall.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful about that, right? Because if it's something that you should know, like if somebody asks you, you know, to state your name for the record and you're like, I don't know, you can't do that. Yeah. But, you know, but if they ask you things like, you know, what was your partner doing at the time? If you don't specifically remember seeing your partner doing something, I don't know what they were doing at the time. I was doing this, so I don't know what they were doing. That is okay to say I don't know.
Go
ahead. Saying, would you agree with me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yesterday. Like,
would you agree with me?
Would you agree with me is one of my favorite tricks because I'm trying to make you look dumb. All right? Or I'm trying to make you agree with something that you don't necessarily agree with. And so I want, whenever you hear something like, you would agree with me that, you're probably not going to agree with that. Or if I ask something like, isn't it true that? Or let's see, what else? What are your other favorites that I use?
Would you agree with me? And as we sit here now today, or whatever.
Yeah. So be careful for those kind of things. Look out for the always and never. Okay, that's another thing.
And only.
And only, yes. So doesn't your protocol say that you should always give nitro for chest pain? Well, no, not always. There's some times where it's not appropriate, right?
You hit that real good, too. When, or was it you that was consider? Who was
yeah,
it?
this is consider, yeah. So be thoughtful about those kind of things because lawyers try to paint things in black and white. But I think I said before earlier today, my favorite phrase is, it depends. And it depends what you guys are doing out in the field. You have guidelines for a reason, okay? Because you need to have a structure for how to respond to a call, but not every call is the same. And there may be some times where you do an intervention and you do it exactly the same way it says, and there may be sometimes you don't because there's other things going on. So beware the always and never.
Going back to this real quick, and we already hit on it some, but words that you will say that you should, if you're hearing yourself say these words, you need to stop. And those words are and, but, and then. Because if you use those words, you're giving additional information. Because what does and mean? And means there's more to come. In addition, you don't want to give her more information. Like we talked about earlier, If a lawyer asks you what time it is, or if your lawyer
you're wearing a
asks
watch.
you if you're wearing a watch, you say yes. Don't say yes and it's currently 11:47. We got 13 minutes left. So don't speculate. I'm going to briefly touch on this because we're going to take this slide out.
Okay.
But when you're working as a PIO, they teach you not to answer the question you're asked. They teach you to tell the story you want to tell. That's the exact opposite when you're given a deposition. Answer the question you're asked.
Correcting non-factual statements. You did a good job with this today, Mr. Duffy. You corrected me on certain things that I asked you. And you would say, like, if I told you that something that you had said something earlier, you were like, no, that's not what I said. So it's okay to go back and correct things because lawyers will try to trip you up with that. They would say, well, earlier, you said that your shirt was pink. Well, no, I didn't. I said my shirt was red. So be sure that you go back and correct things if they misrepresent it or if they characterize it differently than you said. Okay, we skip to the next one because that's it. So when I do depositions, the first thing I do is I go do a deep dive into your life.
Oh, yeah.
Before I take a deposition. I didn't do that today, but if I were doing it, I would have your personnel file. I would have done a
Training
deep dive
records?
into, your training records. I would know every job you've ever had, and I would have been through the whole of your social media.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you guys share rude EMS memes on your Facebook or your Instagram?
Don't raise your hands. I'm advising you against this.
As someone who regularly likes to share these things, I don't do it on public-facing social media because I know that somebody can come back and do things about this. So one of the things that we've seen, like we've had it come up in a deposition before, patient is coding, on the floor, and a nurse is in the bathroom doing a TikTok. Okay, our compliance officer loves to say, don't TikTok on the clock because these things will come up. Well, you were taking, you may have been on a legitimate break, all right, but you're doing this video at the time that something else is going on that you should have been responding to or you should have been dealing with, and now we have this.
How many people here are firemen or firefighters? What do we love to do after we put out a house fire? Take selfies, take pictures in front of the house fire. And what are we doing? Are we smiling? We're all smiling.
Yeah.
And we had a situation where the attorney was, are you pleased with the efforts that this person lost their lives, lost their house, lost their property? So, be careful what you put
about
on social media. All right, so this is an actual deposition that I gave. So I'll give you a little bit of background on this one. This is the opioid settlements where counties sued pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies. And basically, I'll read this if you can't see it. We were trying to prove, and we did end up proving that the pharmaceutical companies caused the opioid epidemic, and we've gotten millions of dollars. So they sit me down in front of 9 lawyers. There are 9 lawyers here in my deposition. And they have a 3-ring binder that's 3 inches thick that they pass over to me and they say, hey, these are all the documents you're going to have to reference. I open it up, and the first document is my complete LinkedIn profile. And the second document is my complete personnel record since I got hired in 1998. And then this is the interaction we have. The attorney says, you have a podcast that you host as well that touches on EMS and legal issues. Is that correct? At this point, I thought I had 3 people who listened to my podcast. My mother, her mother, and occasionally me. That was it. I said, yes, this is correct. He said, what is the title of that podcast? I said, the Standard of Care Podcast. And who is your co-host on that podcast? Guess who? Samantha Johnson. And is Miss Johnson an attorney that's representing Cobb County in this case? She is not. I'll represent to you, I listened to much of your podcast and I didn't catch any episodes that were specifically related to opioid litigation. Do you know if you've ever talked about opioid litigation on your podcast? This is where my attorney says, object to form. I don't believe so. The attorney, I'm sorry, this is the, sorry, was there an objection there? I didn't get it. Ms. Pollack, yes, object to form. Mr. Larson, okay. Mr. Larson, the attorney for Publix, continues to go on. He says, because you never discussed opioid litigation on your podcast, that must mean, would you agree with me, that the opioid problem in Cobb County isn't that big because you never discussed it on your podcast. So I put this up here to point out they will know everything there is about you. They know who your friends are. They know who you follow on Facebook. They know who you follow on MySpace. They know
you dated
everything
yourself
about you.
with that one. But we do know this kind of stuff, and we do ask about those sorts of things. And that one completely caught you off guard. You weren't prepared to answer that question. The reason we didn't talk about it, of course, is because he was involved in active litigation about it. And we're trying not to talk about it for those reasons. But that's also a weird answer to have to give. So, you know, as we talked about today, you are sitting here today doing training. You are training yourselves how to do better documentation, how to handle depositions better. You are practicing it here in a safe space, just like you practice intubation skills, just like you practice IVs, just like you practice CPR. All of these things, you are doing your training, you are preparing. Make sure that when you're faced with the possibility of doing a deposition that you are prepared for it. Get somebody to walk you through, review your PCR, go over it with your QA department, go over it with your supervisors. Make sure you are prepared to answer the kind of questions that might be asked.
All right, we have 6 minutes left, and I would like to keep you here for the next 6 minutes because I actually think this is the best part of the program, and I'll try to leave time for it. You have an attorney in the room. You got questions. Ask away for 6 minutes. Keep them hypothetical because we're being recorded. So hypothetically, if there was a situation like this, what should we do? So who has a question?
Yesterday you touched on your patient assessment.
Yes.
The provider said we kept constantly reassessing the patient, and you nailed them on it because they only had the primary assessment and never did a repeat assessment in the PCR. So we took away yesterday, making sure that you guys are redoing that assessment. Even if nothing changes, just redoing that assessment. If something changes, obviously you note that because she was eating them alive yesterday when they said, we did constantly reassess the patient. Well, there's no documentation to prove that. So kind of the takeaway yesterday was doing multiple assessments in your PCR.
Yep, making sure that you document that stuff, right? So if you say, I reassessed my patient, make sure that there are those check boxes in there that show that you did. That's really important because I'm going to be looking for that.
There's a patient record where there's 51 minutes of assessment, or 51 minutes that you were with the patient, and there was one assessment.
Yeah.
And she said, and it was a critical patient. And she was like, "You're telling me you assessed a critical patient once?" Well, no, I was constantly doing reassessments. Well, you didn't put that in your documentation. And if you didn't document it, guess what?
One done.
Didn't happen.
Yep.
What else? Any other questions?
I'd like to touch on, you were talking about earlier,
Thank you.
kidnapping versus refusal.
Yep. So the case we just had, that patient was refusing care, right? Initially? Yep. And you could be considered that she was kidnapping that patient because she was refusing care against her will. She wasn't. What's that?
Unless she could articulate that she had life capacity to make that decision.
I really love the word you just said. Unless she can articulate that the patient didn't have capacity to make those decisions. That's exactly right. Sam loves to say the whole kidnapping versus...
Oh, well, yeah, okay. So in my service, and the way that we do things in our service, is that I would rather defend a kidnapping, a battery, an assault, all of those things than I would a wrongful death. If a patient needs to go to the hospital, they need to go to the hospital, and we will deal with it later. The very first EMS case that I ever had involved a lady acting nuts on the side of 285 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
285 is a major highway, 6 lanes of traffic that goes around Atlanta.
Yeah. And if you've ever been in Atlanta traffic at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's really bad.
It's really bad.
The medics, when they showed up, this lady was like darting up into the tree line. They ended up getting police involved. They were concerned that she was going to run right out into that traffic. So what did they do? Stuffed her in the bus and hauled her off to the psych ward. And she spent about 18 hours with us. We ended up going through a full jury trial because of some concerns about documentation in the emergency room. And at the end of the day, the medic testified she had to go to the hospital. She wasn't acting right. She kept saying, they're trying to kill me. They've been telling me I'm going to die all day. You know, they were doing this, they were doing that. She had to go to the hospital. And if he had left her there on the side of the road and she had run out and got run over, where would we have been? In court for exactly the same thing, for a wrongful death, because we left a patient we shouldn't have left. Don't abandon your patients. There has never been a case. Let me qualify that. There is one case that I have ever found involving kidnapping by EMS. And it was a guy who kidnapped his coworker and took her off site. It was not a patient. There's not going to be a time, I just don't ever expect to see a case where if you can prove through your documentation that a patient really, really needed to go to the hospital, where you're going to be found liable for that. I just don't see it. And that's where the importance of the documentation comes in, right? What were they saying at the time? What were they doing that made you realize they don't have capacity? And we're going to have to come and teach like a whole other set of classes on capacity.
We do a whole hour on this, and if that's a link to our podcast where we do an episode on capacity evaluations. We also do an article on it. We use this mnemonic called CURED, C-U-R-E-D. C is capacity. You got to be able to show that they don't have the capacity to make medical decisions for some reason. U is that you have to, and this is what you need to do in order to get a patient refusal. Got to show they have capacity. Got to show that they understand what's going on with them in the moment. Got to show that they understand the risks. Got to show that you have educated them on their options and of the education of going to the hospital versus not going to the hospital. And finally, you got to document their decision appropriately. And we try to add one to that is don't make these decisions in a silo. You guys have supervisors. You have echo cars. Mm-hmm. You have medical direction. You have medical control. You have consultation with law enforcement. Those are all things that you should be doing before you let someone who refuses treatment, who you honestly believe has a serious medical condition. You need to make sure you do all those things. And
you need to spend more time with those folks on scene. In your particular case, you spent time with her. She probably did not have the capacity to refuse, and then she went into cardiac arrest. So at that point,
that's pretty much proof.
Yeah, you're just treating this patient at that point. Yeah. So make sure that when you have cases where you're dealing with a patient with questionable capacity, that you spend more time on that and you spend more time on your documentation for that.